Well, good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning, February 18th, 2024. I'm the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair. I'm joined in our chancel by our worship associate, Amy Miller, by everybody who gets together every week to make this service happen, and by all of you. Welcome is an integral part of the faith that we practice here. It is the core of every single thing we do, from when we gather for potlucks, as we will today, to when we work for justice, as we will talk about today, to when we just gather in a small group of people and say, "How are you doing?" and then we mean it. That is all countercultural work. That is the work of the church, and that is the work that we do each time, every Sunday, when we gather in this room. So whether this is your first time here or your 500th, whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever you have come wearing, be it black or very colorful, as my daughter has chosen this morning, know that you are welcome and beloved. It is so good to be together. We say here that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. If we are serious about doing that work, then we need all of you as part of it. Thank you for being here, and we will begin.
Each Sunday, we light a chalice as the symbol of beginning our service and as the symbol of all of us sharing our light together. Our chalice reading today is by the Reverend Ashley Horan. She is the newly elected Vice President for Ministry for the UUA. This piece is called Fierce Urgency. My 4-year-old daughter has taught me this lesson. When a child wants to derail business as usual, to curb the hubris of adults who dare believe in schedules, plans, productivity, one fierce little body and one clear, piercing voice strategically applied to the right pressure point will change the course of the day's events. My comrades in organizing have taught me this lesson. When a silenced people want to be heard, to raise from dry bones a living, breathing dream of new ways of moving, being, and incarnating freedom, one small, tenacious group whose hearts beat in rhythm, rising shoulder to shoulder against the inevitable, will bend the arc of impossibility to hope. Our young climate leaders are teaching us this lesson. When the grown-ups and the old movements are too slow, as the sea levels rise and the hurricanes rage and the migrants flee and the corporations profit, one generation, both young and silenced, refusing to accept an inheritance of doom, will take to the streets and move us towards life. Blessings upon them as they teach us, as they organize us, as they beckon us in and call us out. May their fierce urgency and uncompromising clarity show us the path towards healing and freedom and hope. Blessed be, Ashe, and Amen. Our first hymn today, all of the hymns are from the Teal hymnal. Our first hymn today is number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. That's number 1028. Stand as you are willing or able, and let us join in song.
Into faith set free from
So this is now the time for our story this morning. I'll say, especially for folks who have been with us for a little while, we made some changes to how much staffing we had and what that would look like a couple months ago. So one of the things that has come out of that is being very, very clear about having Sundays off for our staff and knowing when those Sundays are and figuring out different ways to do worship services as part of that. So our religious growth and learning director, Chelsea Krafka, is off this Sunday. However, we are using a video that she recorded a little while ago for one of these Time for All Ages. We are reprising it this morning. So if any young or young at heart would like to come forward for the story, it will be on the screen above me. You can also stay in your seats if you would prefer.
Hello, I'm Chelsea Krafka, and I am the Director of Religious Education at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Good morning. I'm Beryl Aschenberg, and I'm the Director of Religious Education at Fallen Church in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Beryl is my mother, and I am literally following in her footsteps as she used to work here in Lincoln at this church where I currently work when I was growing up. We are happy to be working together in order to share this morning's story with you, which is called Love is Powerful, and it is written by Heather Dean Brewer.
Mari spilled her crayons onto the table. They made a messy rainbow.
What are we coloring, Mama? Her mama smiled.
A message for the world.
Mari ran to the window and pressed her nose to the glass. Far below, people walked in different directions. Buses, cars, and taxis honked and grumbled down the busy street.
Mari asked,
"How will the whole world hear?" Her mama said.
"They'll hear because love is powerful." Mari climbed onto her mama's lap. The crayon smelled sharp and new. Mama used one to write some letters. Even though Mama's words stretched across the poster, they would be too small for the world to read, Mari thought.
Mari picked up a crayon and she made her own sign. She imagined her friends in their apartments across the city, Grandma and Grandpa a plane ride away, and all the people in other countries. Mari wondered, how will the whole world see our message? Mama hugged her close.
They'll see. They'll see, she said, because love is powerful. Mama handed her a coat, and then they both laced up their shoes. Mari tucked the posters under one arm and held Mama's hand with the other. They slipped through the elevator doors. Down, down, down they went, all the way to the lobby.
Mari hopped onto the sidewalk, then stopped and looked up. The street was packed with people, more people than she'd ever seen in her entire life. Mari tugged on Mama's arm to ask her to kneel down. Then she whispered in Mama's ear, "Mama, it's so loud and there's so many people. They won't hear our message." Mama said,
They will, sweetheart. I know they will. Mama lifted Mari up, and for a moment she felt like she was flying. On top of Mama's shoulders, Mari could see the crowd swell for blocks. Hundreds and thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people marching down the street.
Some held signs like Mari's, all saying different things. Everyone cheered as they walked together. Mama joined them. Mari bobbed above the crowd like a canary fluttering over trees. She felt as tall as one of the buildings.
Mari raised her sign for everyone to see. Even though she was small and the crowd was big, so big she didn't think anyone would hear, she called out her message.
Through the roar, her voice was heard and someone shouted the message back. Mari yelled again and more joined in. Again, she yelled the message.
And this time, when the crowd called back, Mari's message rumbled down the streets and echoed off the buildings. It was as loud as breaking waves.
Love is powerful. Can you say it with us?
Can you say it with us? Let's say it, Chelsea.
Love is powerful.
Love is powerful.
And that is the end of our story.
And there are more stories to be told. How will you tell them? What is your message to the world?
All right, so if kids want to make their way to their classrooms, we'll listen to some music.
Good morning. I'm Elle Stratman, a member of the Board of Trustees, and I want to offer a special welcome to those of you who are visiting for the first time. Today after service, join us for the first potluck of 2024. Following that will be a Justice in Action Network meeting, and I hope to see you there. The winter lecture series begins tonight. Lectures are on Zoom at 7 p.m. This Friday, February 23rd, we are hosting a coffee house game night. This is a family-friendly gathering with games and snacks. Details for these events are in the Friday e-blast. Stop by the office to get signed up if you're interested in receiving electronic emails and newsletters.
Each Sunday when we gather, we set aside time as part of our service to speak the joys and sorrows of our lives into this community. We do this because, as Khalil Gibran says, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. As William Blake says, joy and sorrow are woven fine. They are the stuff of our communal life. Sorrow is easier borne with friends. Joy is easier celebrated. So, in a moment, we'll hold some silence, and then into that shared silence, if you want to speak the name of someone, it could be your name, who you are holding in sorrow this week, you're invited to do so. If you're online, you can type the name into the live chat, and I will repeat it into this room. Who are we holding in sorrow this morning? Celia. The Can family. The people of Gaza.
The people of Ukraine.
The people of Ukraine. Jala. There are no sorrows in the live chat yet. We also know that sorrow is not the only story. That the psalmist writes, sorrow endures for the night, but joy cometh with the dawn. Who are we holding in joy this week? Marcia is going to California to see Nova and his mommies. Not sure who in that system is more excited about that visit. Katie.
Cassidy Bell, a high schooler who's working on legislation with Daniel Conrad.
Cassidy Bell, a high schooler working on legislation with Daniel Conrad.
Me, I got into a PhD program.
A PhD program. There's a joy in the live chat from Amy Miller. Joy spent the whole day with Molly Clarkson registering voters with disabilities. And from Erica Berkey Rios, joy for all of you, the community, our Unitarian Church of Lincoln. It is also the case that there are joys and sorrows deeply felt that aren't ready to be spoken aloud. So for all of those joys and sorrows present in the room, we hold a moment of silence. Amen. Our next hymn is number 1023, Building Bridges. We'll actually rise in body or in spirit for this one. It's an old organizing song. Good to stand with. And then, Julie, do you want to help lead us through this one?
We'll sing it twice together and then we'll break into a round. It'll be so fun. Just play it once.
read things that talk about the fact that we think that happiness only comes in really big packages, like going on a cruise or winning the lottery. I think happiness, much more enthusiastically and authentically, is small bits and pieces when you recognize them, like waking up and realizing church potluck. Small happinesses like having your accordion teacher perform at your church and having those two worlds collide. Happiness in partnering with the local nonprofits within our community. I know that the church of origin that I was raised in as a child just collected money for the church, which is necessary, and we want you to keep doing that. But I'm so proud of the Unitarians because each year at the spring congregational meeting, our members get together and vote on 10 nonprofit organizations within our community for Share the Plate, so that the money gathered during one service that month goes to one of the nonprofits that we, the members, chose. For February this year, our Share the Plate recipient is Fresh Start. So my other small joy today is having the privilege of Monica Zenke with her amazing work coming up to talk to us about the work of Fresh Start here in Lincoln.
Good morning, everyone. One of my joys is always coming here because my worlds collide here a lot too. Hi, Lindsay, flute teacher for my daughter. Most of you are very familiar with Fresh Start, so I don't always go into a lot of detail about what we do, but there's always some new people, so I'll share a little bit about what we do at Fresh Start. But I want to start with a thank you to this church. This church has been involved with Fresh Start since the beginning. Hi, Steve. Thanks, Eleanor. Since the beginning, and so it's always a special joy to come here with our longstanding history and involvement, even before the official Share the Plate. So it's always a joy, personally and professionally, to come here. For those of you that aren't familiar with Fresh Start, or as a reminder, Fresh Start is a transitional program for women experiencing homelessness. We're considered a shelter because it's communal living, but it's really more like a long-term home that they can stay in for up to a year. Fresh Start's a little different because they can be homeless for any reason, and so we see a lot of women that come to us struggling with substance abuse, with mental health, with legal issues that are preventing them from getting jobs or getting housing, and often a combination of those. So it's any reason of homelessness, and then that gives them more time to address all the barriers that come with that. So since they can stay for a year. But it is a goals program. They set goals with their case manager and work towards those goals, and sometimes the pace is different. It's all individualized. We have a 19-year-old right now getting her GED, and her pace for her goals is a little different in trying to learn how to adult. I guess that's become a verb now, learning to adult. At 19 is a little different than the 62-year-old that we had last year that's coming in, that's really trying to figure out how to restart her life after a number of different losses, and figuring out the barriers that came from that and not sliding deeper into the barriers that she thought she'd overcome with substance use. So that's a lot different at 62 for a goal plan than it is at 19. So it is very individualized so that we can meet them where they are and help them get the resources that they need to become successful and hopefully not become homeless again in their life. You know, I was sitting there and I was noticing the rocks. And like so much when I come here, like I said, it always resonates with Fresh Start and with personally, but there's the stones there that say hope, freedom, and love. And those three things really speak to Fresh Start as well. We provide a lot of hope for their future when they come, and these are things they tell us. They say, I found my hope again, is what one resident told me one time. I'd lost my hope, and I found my hope again here. And a lot of them say, I'm not struggling as much. I feel more free now because I'm not struggling as much. So that sense of freedom that we provide. And I don't know that I could say it better than the story about love is powerful. So thank you for helping Fresh Start provide those things to our alumna. And Judy, before I came in, I don't know where Judy's sitting, said something that also struck me. She said, you know, someone helped us so that we can help somebody else. And that's what the Share the Plates are about. And today, after I leave here, I get to go to Fresh Start. And yes, I say get to work on a Sunday because that's how I feel. Where an alumna is coming back to volunteer at Fresh Start and help me with a project. And then later today, another alumna that we just hired is there because we helped them, so now they can help someone else. So just like this church does, that's what we do at Fresh Start. So thank you for that phrase, Judy, because that, I think, really says what we all do together here in this church and then at Fresh Start. So thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to learn more about Fresh Start or more ways to get involved, you can find our website, which is freshstarthome.org, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can find us at all of those places for ways to get involved, either as a volunteer, donated items, or with financial contributions. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Monica. Now, as a reminder, we're going to be giving Fresh Start any money raised this week for the Share the Plate. The ushers are going to pass the baskets. You can donate loose cash or checks. If you're doing a check and you want it to go to Fresh Start, right, Share the Plate in the memo line. You can also do text giving. You can text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. I am confident this is also above. It is not above. I'll say it again then, super slow. I can't hold numbers in my head anymore. Is that just me? Okay. Whew. If you want to text UC Lincoln and the amount, you're texting that to the number 73256. What's the number? Will the ushers please come forward to accept the offering while we listen to more accordion?
So last week, I had the honor to spend several days at a hotel in Florida with several hundred pastors, rabbis, ministers, and priests from across the country as part of the annual clergy conference put on by the Direct Action Research and Training Network, DART. There were 5 of us from Lincoln there, crammed into a rental car that was not generously sized for 5 people, some of whom are not small people. DART is one of the big umbrella groups for community organizing through religious congregations across the country. Now, depending on where you are, there are a few different networks. I learned community organizing through the Gamaliel Network. My mentor was trained through the Pacific Institute for Community Organization, PICO, which is now the Faith in Action Network. The Industrial Areas Foundation is sort of the granddaddy of them all. They have an affiliate here in Omaha. Acorn was a big network in this, but has since gone out of business. This model of community organizing, though, has been one that the UUA has participated in for a long time, and one that a lot of our congregations and clergy really draw on. Ashley Horan, who wrote the piece that we lit our chalice with, is the new vice president of programming for the UUA. But before that, her title at the UUA was National Director of Organizing, from which came the UU The Vote program, On the Side of Love. All of the big social justice programs at the UUA take community organizing as its model. So what all of those networks share, from Gamaliel to PICO to UU The Vote, is a basic vocabulary and toolbox for doing justice, and usually some historic connection to Saul Alinsky's work, organizing in Chicago through IAF. This last bit has made them famous, if not particularly popular, among a certain part of the right-wing ecosystem. Over the last 3 years, our congregation here in Lincoln has been part of founding Justice in Action, a part of the DART organization using this model for community organizing. Now, each of these networks emphasize religious communities as a key building block. Churches, synagogues, community centers, they all do community organizing work naturally. And so when organizing to affect change in the world, they provide networks already in place, and a place where people are already used to coming together and imagining a better world. So the clergy conference I was at serves 2 purposes. The first, and the one that takes the most time, is to do some professional development around preaching about justice. So this year, Margaret Amer, the dean of Austin Presbyterian Seminary, led a 3-day conversation about reading the Gospel of Mark from the margins, from the perspective of those seeking a more just world. She was joined by Rabbi Samuel Rose from Greensboro, North Carolina. So if you want to hear about a fascinating conversation about the Sabbath and the possible relationships between the historic Jesus and the Pharisees as a movement in first century Judaism, I have 30 minutes of material prepared that you can ask me about at lunch. But it is fascinating material. I'll just say, actually ask me about it at lunch. It is to see an American Christian theologian and an American rabbi in conversation about first century Judaism and how that intersects with race and religion and organizing in America in 2024. It was a rich, rich conversation. But lunch. Ask me about it at lunch. We have an hour and a potluck. So the other part of the organizing conference is to reinforce the tools of community organizing with clergy who participate in these networks. Right now, in some ways, what we already do at local churches is community organizing. Most of us are adept at thinking about communal problems and how we mobilize our folks to address them. But there's also a way in which the work that we do at churches is just similar enough to the work of community organizing that it sometimes gets in the way, right? Our instincts at churches are like 90% of the way there. But that last 10% can really confuse an organizing effort if we don't work on it and practice it. So part of the training last week then paused the biblical exegesis to instead practice one-on-one conversations. One-on-ones are a subtle tool in organizing. It's a tool that doesn't quite look like a tool. In the organizing world, one-on-ones are not quite interviews, not quite unstructured conversations. They're designed to go deep fast, uncovering why you do this work, what your motivation is. In organizing terms, they are a tool to get at what a person's self-interest is, what connects them to the work that we're doing together, so that they can see it more clearly, and so that they can connect more deeply with the why of justice for themselves. There was an odd moment last week when an organizer reviewing all of this turned to a group of 30 clergy in a room and reminded us how rare and countercultural it was to have a conversation where you ask another person deep questions and then actually listen to the answer. Why are you called to this work? What makes you mad? How do you connect with others? This is a thing, she said, that we rarely do in our lives. To a group of clergy. 90% of the way there, right? This is not a remarkable countercultural tool. This is Tuesday in just about any half-competent minister's office. But after we laughed a little bit about that, we got to work practicing. Because there are two things that make one-on-ones indispensable for the work of organizing. First, something that Dart gets absolutely right, that we know intuitively in churches but rarely say out loud, is that one-on-one relationships are the core of organizing. Every single congregation, every community organization, every institution that looks even a little bit like a church is a network of individual I-thou relationships. We've talked here before about this idea of church as an emergent property. It's the thing that comes out of all of us gathered here. The church is the thing that arises out of the web of relationships. So as a quick activity, look around the room for a moment. Think about all of the one-on-one relationships in this room. Think about how many you have. Think about all of the ones that you don't see. Think about all of the ones that haven't yet formed but are there in possibility. Imagine them as a web. Imagine them as strands tying each person to another. Each person a node in a network of relationships. Strands tying you with that person over there you volunteered in the kitchen with that one time. Or a new person that you greeted this morning. Maybe this is your second time here, and those threads are a little tentative, but you can start to see them between other members and see where you might start to build those threads yourself. The practice of doing one-on-one conversations on purpose is about tending to those connections, about strengthening that web in the community that you are organizing. We do this in churches naturally over decades. In networks like Justice in Action, we do that same work more intentionally. Because justice making, especially organizing for justice, is a relational act. People do not, as a rule, show up for abstractions. We show up for each other. This is what makes community organizing a powerful model. It's not a theoretical concept asking you to show up to a meeting with a county commissioner. It's your friend Barbara calling you on the phone saying, this is a thing that's going on in my life. I really need you to be here. The other important piece about practicing one-on-ones with other clergy is that it is very literally practice. Practice. Community organizing has accountability built into the model. The one-on-one practice in Florida wasn't just for fun, it was critiqued by our peers and organizers. Just about every event in community organizing ends with the folks involved in leading it reflecting on what went well and what didn't, soliciting honest feedback. We do this because every single tool in community organizing or elsewhere shares this one thing in common. We get better using it the more we do it. For me, in Florida, it was a reminder to share more of my own story. That's that 10% difference between pastoring and organizing, is how much of your own story to share. On Tuesday in the minister's office, not very much. Right? My story is not the important one and is usually a distraction from a pastoral need. In organizing in a one-on-one, it's a way to build empathy and collective power. And so we point those things out to each other. Say, how do we get better at using these tools? Because justice making is a discipline. Organizing is disciplined. This is the not-so-secret tool of community organizing efforts. If the executive director of the DART network gets up in front of the clergy conference and as part of his State of the Network address says he's committed to doing 10 one-on-ones a week for the next year, then we're going to expect him to do that. And we will check in about it at the next clergy conference. Even for something as simple as conversations with one other person, skills develop and deepen through practice, sometimes over years and decades. So we could pivot to other ways to illustrate this point, how practice and discipline deepen any skill. I could talk about exercise, how something as simple as a deadlift, so picking up something heavy from the ground, holding it for a second, and putting it back down on the ground. That's basically a deadlift, is a skilled movement. And just doing it with skill and with practice is as effective as adding more muscle when you're doing weightlifting. But that's not the comparison we're going to dwell on. Because here's the preacher turn. All of this has sounded like a book report so far, so we're going to get to a sermon in the last couple minutes here. Skills develop and deepen through practice. 150 years ago, 250 years ago, a group of reformers in the Church of England had that same insight. It's not enough, they said, to simply wait for spiritual experiences, to pray for inspiration. The key was practice, discipline, in everything from prayer to congregational singing. They called it a method of spiritual practices to build the skills of going deep. Their spiritual descendants, of course, are the Methodist Church. That is the method in Methodism. The insight that you do this with practice. You don't just do it and assume that maybe you'll get better. Community organizing has a theory of social change. Change in the context of the United States in the last 100 years happens one of two ways: organized money or organized people. If we assume that there are no billionaires in this room, and if there are, please come see me at lunch about your pledge. Assuming, though, that that is not the topic of our lunchtime conversation, then we need organized people if we're going to change the world. because the folks who are involved in the status quo are organized. They are organized people, and often they have organized money too. So the theory of change that we have with Justice in Action is that we're not going to have the organized money, but we can out-organize our people. We can out-organize any group that thinks that the status quo is the way that it should be. Because that's what churches are really good at. To organize people, to do that then, we need the practice, the disciplines of talking to each other, of holding each other accountable, of inviting in, of showing up to events, all this stuff that is pretty basic. But you do it well and practice it enough, and suddenly you're turning up 1,000 people. And for churches, this has a side effect. As we do the work of organizing for justice, we also develop the skills of going deep with each other. If we get really good at doing one-on-ones for Justice in Action, that means that we're also getting really good at having one-on-one conversations with each other, at having one-on-one conversations with people from other churches where we say, well, you know, we don't need to agree on everything, but I have an I-thou relationship with you. We are in this work together. One of the people that I spent the most time with in Florida was a Baptist preacher from the outskirts of Kansas City. Now, he and I share nothing theologically. He asked if I would say grace over lunch once, and I did, and he burst out laughing at the end and did not ask me again. But we had spent days with each other developing this relationship, saying the things that you're working on in Wyandotte County in Kansas are important. I see them. They're related to the things that we're working on in Lancaster County in Nebraska. And this is how we're going to change it. We're going to be in relationship. We're going to practice doing this stuff together. We are going to deepen our relationship, and in doing so, deepen the work of justice and deepen the work of our own souls. That's the model. All right. We're going to sing one last song, which is 1017, Building a New Way. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the rest of today looks like. If you would, rise in body or in spirit for this one.
Really short intro.
Feeling strong.
All right, so a little bit of traffic direction as we close out our service. So Justice in Action is the DART affiliate in Lincoln. We're working on 3 issues in our community: access to mental health care, affordable housing, and pretrial diversion and release programs at the county jail. We're building the power of organized people leading up to a large assembly in May, where we'll put some specific requests to particular public officials with the power to make the changes we believe are necessary. Today is a day in that process. It's what's called in Justice in Action terms a network meeting, where we gather everyone at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln who is or might be involved in this effort together in one room and give you an update on where we are right now. It's the midway point between the house meetings that we had in the fall. Raise your hand if you were involved in any of those. We got some folks here. All right. We're at the midway point between that moment and the big assembly we'll participate in May. Now, to be specific about one thing, I do see some new faces in here. So if this is your first time hearing about Justice in Action, come. This is actually a really great time to hear about the work that we're doing and figure out how you might plug into it. If you're a longtime member here who is tired of hearing me talk about it and want to see what it's actually about, come. We would love to have you. The idea is that we want to get this information out to as many folks as possible, because between now and May, we're going to be making a pretty big push to get out as many Unitarians as possible to this event. Last year, there were 125. Somebody help me. I wasn't actually here. 135. So last year. So DART says that the goal is, if you can turn out your average Sunday attendance 52 Sundays a year, then you should be able to turn out that same number of people once for the Nehemiah Action in May. Last year, we averaged 90 people in person on Sunday morning. Last year, we turned out to the Nehemiah Assembly 135 people. This year, our organizer asked me and a couple other people, how many people do you think you can turn out? And we looked at each other and said, well, so our average Sunday attendance is still about 90, so we think we can do 150. A 10% increase over last year. Ish. So that's where we're going. Organize people. And one of the ways that we organize is we show up, and that is a thing that we know how to do as the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. So there's a sign-up sheet out there. If you know for sure you're coming on May 2nd to the Nehemiah Assembly, just walk out of that door, go sign up, and then go get your food. If you're not sure, then walk out that door, get your food, and then come back in here at noon, where we'll do a network meeting. If you think, I really don't like this Justice in Action stuff, walk out the door, go get your food, and then come back in, because you might be wrong. Relationships build justice. That is what we are about. So the other reason that we do a potluck is it's a chance just to connect with people, because we are Unitarians. And this church has rarely willingly forgone an opportunity to have fun. That's why we have a potluck before the update. So, go in peace, but don't go very far. And I'll see you back here in about 55 minutes after one more piece of music. All right.